So this is a different setting than we're normally in. We're in Le Petit Trianon, which is the basement of the building that we have our studio spaces in, and there's the Trianon Gallery upstairs. And we're down here because we have an exhibition coming up with 5 pieces, well, kind of 6, but 5 pieces that we collaborated on, and so that's why we're talking about collaboration today. And yeah, that's why we're down here, because we were just installing the pieces.
Yep.
And we thought this would be a bright idea to actually talk about our collaborative process and kind of what that's been like, what we've learned. Yeah, I don't know, just it's something that was new to me, and I think new to you in this sense as well. So maybe talking about the collaborative process in general and what we thought, and then kind of how we collaborate together.
Because there's a lot of different types of collaboration, right? Having collaborative shows could be each of us having our own pieces, but each being in the show, collaborating together, finding out which works together, that kind of like curating collaboratively. In this instance, the way we worked collaboratively was literally on every single piece and at all times working collaboratively. So it's got like a few layers. Like we didn't just both of our hands touch each piece, but we were doing them at the same time.
Yeah.
In one session for the most part.
Yeah, there's only I think 1 piece out of the 5 that took multiple sessions.
And it was, this collaboration was inspired by Warhol and
Basquiat.
yeah, and so we watched that video.
We watched the biopic of Basquiat with, I don't know if there's more than one, so
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the actor who plays Basquiat,
Yeah.
but I know that Bowie plays Warhol.
Yeah.
That one, whatever year that one was. Yeah.
But yeah, and so they had worked on a piece collaboratively, and so it was something that we then kind of moved and gelled into a way that worked for both of us. So
there's a scene in it that I know that we talked about, and that was when they're in Andy's studio, and he's painting like a black horse, and it's just like black and white, and that's it from what I remember. And Basquiat just goes and like puts like a big white line through it, and then Andy's like, "Oh, that was my favorite part," or something. But he left it, and so we were kind of like laughing about that a little bit, and being like, "Well, what would that be like if we were collaborating on pieces, and then, you know, like, how does that? I don't know. I don't remember the conversation we had because it was about a year ago, if not. Oh, yeah. It was about a year ago.
Yeah, probably about a year ago. But yeah, and it was something then that was kind of a reflection as we were working on it, thinking about that. But this is the first time I've worked this collaboratively, like on every single piece within, like basically working within, what's our biggest piece? 5 or 6 feet?
Yeah, it was like 45 by 56 inches or something.
Yeah, so basically, you know, at the most within a 6-foot area, painting over and
we're never more than an arm's length away from each other.
Yeah.
Like if we're both like right in the same space working on it, touching at the same time.
Yeah, so it was quite a different, a very close collaboration, a very, like I say, it's the only collaboration like this that I have ever done.
Yeah.
And it had its challenges, and like any collaboration, right? It's got sort of these challenges and high points and interesting points and learning points and yeah, a bunch of different points.
Well, I think we could talk too about like collaborations that people have done in the past or whatever, because I haven't really. I think the closest I've ever done to collaborating with anyone on visual art was a friend of mine. I think he painted the background and I was going to paint on top of it after. It was like a 16 by 20. We weren't working on it at the same time. And it just, I don't know, it was just a weird vibe, and it's also because I was like not used to collaborating and stuff either, so like that was the only time I can remember doing a collaborative like visual art piece. I collaborated on writing before, and like writing a song together where I just put someone else's words and mixed them in with mine, but I still kind of had like final like editing, you know what I mean? Because I was the one who was going to be screaming the words, and so like I kind of put it all together and formatted it, so it's still like wasn't a collaboration as much as, I don't know what to call it, but I used some words that like we collaborated initially on the idea for one of the songs. I remember like Jordan and I sat down, talked about our experiences of fatherlessness. We knew we were going to write a song about it, so we sat down and had coffee and like really talked about kind of the experiences that we had. Wrote a couple lines, shared the lines that we had, thoughts and ideas. So that was a collaboration just in like a meeting type of sense that ended up being, like I said, that I used some of his lines and I was doing the rest of the writing and editing it and whatever, curating the words. I don't know what to call it, but yeah, that's kind of my only two experiences before you, really, with any type of collaboration that led to a finished work. Because we talk a lot about collaborating sometimes as just talking, but like, obviously I've had really great creative conversations before, but they didn't lead to like anything, like I said, like a completed work of some nature.
Yeah.
And then when we started, well, even before we started officially sharing studio spaces, we just had conversations in those spaces. You started making work, and I was making work, and then, so even just those conversations ended up sometimes, I don't think they were collaboration in the sense that like sometimes something influenced what you were doing, and sometimes it influenced what I was doing, but it wasn't like intentional, like collaboration or whatever. It was more just, I don't know. I guess that's where there's like a little line, like a blurry line when we have conversations, because we both talk about it, like collaboration sometimes.
Well, and I think we both have pretty collaborative, well, we have an easy collaborative experience. Like it seems like we work fairly well together collaboratively. We're really open to hearing what each other has to say, it seems like. We have respect for each other's ideas, like that's really big. To try and collaborate with someone who you don't have the same sort of respect for, I think that's where you kind of end up getting some power differences, where you're not able to kind of work things out because there's not a trust in the other person. Whereas when you respect someone's sort of conceptual ideas or how they do work or that sort of thing, then that sort of goes unsaid. There's that layer that you don't have to worry about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I never feel like I have to go, oh, that's not going to be up to snuff of what I like doing, or I feel like I'm compromising this way. Or, I mean, there's compromises, but they're different sorts of compromises. I never feel like, I don't know how to describe that, but I think it's really, really important for a person you're going to collaborate with that you have a respect for their ideas, their talents, because those are kind of like a groundwork, like a foundation you need to have to be able to do stuff, because there's still things that come up, and when you work with another person, there's still things that come up that you might think this or that, or feelings or whatever, but if you have that foundation, then I think that's what makes collaborative work all right.
Yeah. So, and you've done way more type of collaborating before, or like more than I've just done, period, before we ended up collaborating together, from my knowledge anyway. And so like, I guess with those two experiences that I outlined, like the visual art piece was like, I don't even remember what happened with it. And the writing thing, I felt good about the conversation and everything, and I felt good because I knew at the end of the day I had the final, I could put it together how I wanted to. So that experience for me worked out well. But what are some of the collaborative experiences you had before this, and how did they kind of turn out?
Well, probably the biggest collaborator I've worked with, who I've mentioned before, is Kelly Andres. And her and I worked together on a large 5-piece performance piece. And so that was a fairly involved one, and one that we did every single performance, was worked out, and we both did it together. However, they were still almost separate, so we're doing the same thing but separated. But again, we had a foundation of really respecting each other's ideas, knowledge, conceptual background, that kind of thing. So again, there was that trust there of that. And so then once you have that foundation, you can kind of go, I wouldn't say crazy, but you're a lot more open than you might be. Like I've tried to work collaboratively with people who I did not share the same, either probably conceptual values. I probably didn't admire their work as much, right?
Yeah.
I'm being snotty, probably, right? And so it was way harder for me to work there because I was sort of like, oh, is this up to a standard that I like? And so it was unfair to the person I was collaborating with. And so it's just, that's a really uneven collaborative. So I think in order to collaborate, you really need to have that power to be as even as it can be, in order for that to work. So with Kelly, it was a great experience. And we kind of, even for a year, just sort of, life was kind of this collaborative performance in a way, right? So everything it just kind of went along that way and was really easy, but it was that foundation. And then I've worked collaborations with collectives, which is way different, harder, and there's a lot less control that you have.
What was it called again? The Blanket? Was that the one here?
Yeah, the Blanket Collective. And now that I think about it, I don't know if that's so much a collaboration. It's a collective that comes together. But, and we were collaborating on one work. It's hard. When you collaborate with more than one person, right away, life's getting more difficult, right?
Yeah.
But we did amazing work. And when you believe really strong in the work and the concept, you're willing to push things through. And again, the women that I was working with, I really respected their foundation. I respected their art, I respected their political views, all of those sort of foundation things. So I can't think of a really bad collaborative experience, but I think I just didn't get into them. Like there was ones where, sort of the same thing where you were talking about, where you're kind of like, oh, maybe we'll do this. And then I kind of knew it wasn't really going to gel, so you kind of just like forgot about it. And kind of just never finished that collaboration with that person. But I don't know, there's collaborating, and then I think there's collaborating as we have on this piece, which is like completely this exhibition. And also we're going to perform at the exhibition. And so I think it's a pretty special collaboration.
Yeah, I think before we I just thought of an idea when you were saying how difficult it is to collaborate with many people at once even, let alone just one person to one person.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, how come I don't think of my past, like bands that I've been in as a collaboration?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean like there's always, in the 3 bands that I'm thinking of, it's always been 5 people total. And I don't know, it's because I think that I'm not I haven't been thinking of it as a collab. There's so much compromise.
Yeah.
That's a lot, but at the same time, I don't really have any musicality when it comes to instruments. It's not like I can be like, oh, actually, I like what you did there, but can we try this? And then like, I can make mouth noises.
But that's collaborating.
I guess, but I mean, I always just thought of like, usually they would send like a scratch track of just the skeleton of the song on guitar.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I just want this part to play again, or I think this goes a little longer or something. And those are discussions sometimes we would have all together in the room. But then it's like, okay, I have that thing, and now I just write my words to it, and then, like, no one ever, I don't want to say challenged, but nobody ever had anything to say about what I was writing. Which in some ways was great, because I didn't have to ever compromise anything I wrote. So in that aspect, like my piece that I brought to it, there was no collaborating on that. It was a part of a bigger whole. Yeah. But that was kind of like, I don't know, in those instances, it was rarely ever like a negative experience of like, well, no, I want it to be this long, or I want it to be, there was a couple times I think there was pieces where it was like, well, no, like we need to do this or do that, or like, I don't know, it was usually pretty easy going from my memory. But for some reason, I don't, like that should be a collaboration.
That's absolutely a collaboration.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, I just thought of it differently because it was like, I just had one piece and I was like, okay, you did this and now I do this, and then...
Well, and I mean, for you, it was a collaboration basically without any challenge, right? It sounds
To
like,
my part.
right.
I think that when it came to I mean, there's 4 other things going on, just 2 guitars, bass, and drums, and then when it came to that stuff, like I said, they were usually working it out, and I was in the room, and I had comments, like every once in a while, but a lot of the time someone would bring their own, like it would start with one person, okay, I wrote this guitar part, or I wrote like the skeleton of a whole song, and then someone else might come up with their part just based on that part. Sometimes things almost never changed.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, that person had their part, that person based it off their part, well then this like drums based it off of those parts, and sometimes there was nothing to say. And then I wrote my words based on, you know, the very beginning as well. So like, I don't know. Like there's a lot of compromise sometimes, and sometimes it was like, okay, that's great, that works, let's just do it.
Yeah.
I don't know, for some reason I feel like it's there, but it's not when I think of collaborating, like.
Well, it sounds like it is collaborating, but you're almost doing it in separate spaces, right? You're almost, yeah, it's just a different type of collaboration. It's definitely collaborating because you're all bringing your pieces. Like to me, collaborating would be like everyone sort of bringing their pieces, their input to something. Everyone sort of having input. So it wouldn't be necessarily collaboration if you just, I don't know, gave the music. And if you just gave everything to your band and said, here's how it's going to be, and they just played it, well, then it's not a collaboration.
Yeah.
But being as one person's coming up with music, and then probably the person who plays bass is kind of, okay, they're bringing their little bit in. And
Yeah.
so.
Well, yeah,
it's
there's
just
like those
different.
5 different pieces that make up one whole. It's something,
Yeah.
But to me, the conversations were more collaboration than sometimes the other stuff was. When we were talking about like okay, well, how do we want this to go? What do we need to do with this now? How do we edit this to make it what we want? But,
Well, it's a process, right? Like, process is so important, and so that's, I guess, what you're saying is the process was more collaborative. Although your performance was very collaborative, obviously.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, I know it's different band, like.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, like I don't know why it's weirding me out to like call it a collaborative thing. I don't know why, because it definitely, I do see the difference. Like when you said, like you were kind of describing like what in my head was like a feature. Like we had a featured vocalist on a track once, and like here's the lyrics, here's the part, and like you're still using their voice.
Yeah,
but it was
that's
like
not a collaboration.
no, that was like you're being featured on our thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could. There's times where those things can be a collaboration, but that's not what it was when we did it. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess I've had those experiences too, which were all completely different. But I don't know, I think it was just because it wasn't like, if we think of like the 2 guitar players, someone sitting together and writing it at the same time, to me that was very collaborative. That's like you and me painting this piece at the same time. Because then they're like, oh no, how about we try this or this note instead or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was never a part of, like I said, there were times where they were jamming and then I would have like 1 or 2 comments, but there's not a lot I had to say. Right. Unless it became like that, I think that's too long, or that's too short, or I like that, can we do that part again? Like, yeah. But I didn't really have a lot of input because my knowledge with like instruments and stuff wasn't really there. But yeah. Anyway.
What would you say then in the work you have done collaboratively? What challenges you the most? Like, did you find things that are challenging?
Yeah, and I mean, and that's, I think, a good segue into just talking about our specific what we do, because giving up control, like, is the main thing that I think is so, I was really concerned about it the very first time I did, like, a visual art kind of collaboration type thing, I was like, meh, like, it was whatever, and then with, and that was just one piece, it wasn't like art stuff where we just keep revisiting collaboration over and over again in different ways. And with the music thing, it wasn't so, like, I really didn't feel like I wasn't nervous about the control aspect when it came to a specific song that much. It was more of everything else surrounding it, like organizing this and organizing that and making sure everything is ready for a performance type thing. So then when it came into this one, we were like...
Trust, right? It's that whole thing of trust in a way. Trusting everyone is going to do everything they said they would and show up when they said they're going to. And Don't you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the performance as a collaboration, then yes, then it was more, yeah, definitely. And then, that's the thing, so that's the biggest challenge for me when we even started. And like, if I keep looking at this or whatever, because this is the very first piece that we did, and I think out of the 5, it's actually still my favorite.
Yeah, me too. It is the biggest though, which makes it, like when I think of our other ones, and I'm glad our other one we're going to do is going to be a large one as well.
Yeah.
I think that size really makes a difference because we had time, or we had space to get around each other,
yeah.
And maybe we had no idea, like no anticipation. I don't know, but this is still my favorite as well. Yeah. But anyway, sorry.
No, I was going to say that there's segueing into the talking about like our pieces and our process and collaborating. Because you asked what was like the biggest challenge, and still when it came to us, like we had been, I don't even know, how long have we been talking about art and making art together already, or not together, but like in the same space and we were talking about art for like a year before that.
We still weren't sharing studio space, I don't think, when we started this one.
No?
No, I don't think so.
No, not officially sharing, but you had
I had stuff there.
So we've been around each other, even before I had studio space, we were talking about art and everything.
Sure.
And
that's how we met.
Yeah, and then I got that space upstairs, Mars, and then eventually you came in a couple months after I had it and started creating work. So we were already familiar enough with like talking about art with each other, because you said like conceptually, like you really want to be on the same page with somebody. That definitely makes things a lot easier.
It doesn't mean that, and when we say conceptually on the same page, it doesn't mean that you have all the same ideas or ways of working or techniques of working, like all those things are completely different than just sort of like also sharing conceptual. So you still, because you and I, our ways of working are very different. We did our influences like a couple of episodes ago.
Past 2 podcasts, we talked about our favorite artists and how they influence our work and stuff.
And those are completely different, like couldn't be any more different, even though I love ones on yours, but we both chose and they're very different. So we have different styles, we have different maybe influences, and so there's a lot of things so different about us. And yet conceptually there's still that respect for the work and how we work. And I, obviously like how you paint and that sort of thing as well. But, to work together and to decide to collaborate doesn't mean you work the same way, have the, all the same ideals or, all of those things. It doesn't mean those are the same. So
I think compatibility is like that's another, or like having good chemistry or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that's different. I think having the good chemistry is one thing, but also like that our individual works, not visually the way they're expressed, are necessarily compatible with each other when they show together, but like you said, conceptually compatible. I guess that we, like you said, that we have the same maybe ideas about art and the same values. And what does art mean to us, and why do we even express stuff, why do we even make art? A lot of that is very compatible, and we think about art in the same ways, like a vast majority of the time. Just like what is art? Like for the most part, we generally are on the same page of like, this is a piece of art, and this is not, and whatever. So and even despite the fact that we had all that, and there was compatibility and chemistry as like friends, as just like artists, when we talked about stuff, conceptual stuff, I was still like, I was scared of like, okay, how is it going to be when we start painting this thing together? Because it's like, we're both working on it at the same time, like, so what happens, like, how does it, I don't remember, it was like a year ago, so I was just like, how do we finish off a piece? And I guess we're going to talk about that, but it was just kind of like, okay, what do we do?
And it was hard, or at least awkward to start. Like it was, there were sort of these awkward starts and figuring it out and not sure what to do. And then I felt like there was kind of a rhythm, and then I didn't feel awkward anymore. And it sort of, we didn't sit and talk about it, and sort of say, okay, this one is going to be this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I think almost if we had done that, and I think on a couple or at least one for sure I can think about, we talked about it more, and I think that kind of wasn't good, actually.
It might have been coincidence, I don't know. But
maybe, yeah.
But if you,
because I think, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is what it's like to work collaboratively. But I think that when you are working collaboratively and you're working, especially this, where you're painting side by side, there and there, if any of the energy is off, or one person is off, or one person is this, or one person is that, or you just, it's just not, if that's happening with one person, it really affects it, and
Absolutely.
we really saw that happen.
With that other one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we start with the first one we did, I think, because you brought something up about feeling awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was, okay, so first off, how we started it, it was like the night before, I think, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm just going to paint the background just red. I'm like, we need something to start with, so I'm just going to paint it all red. And you're like, hey, I don't remember if you even answered me before I did it or not.
Yeah.
But I was like, you ended up being okay with it, which was good. I was just.
But then when I came in the next day, you had put butcher's paper on it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay, see, I didn't remember if I did that before you got here or not.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, so.
And I was like,
Well, because there was a thing, we wanted to start it together,
yeah.
and so that's why I didn't remember if I did that or not, but.
Well, you had to in order for it to dry, right?
That's right, I gested it, because, so the butcher's paper has texture, which we have on there.
Which I love.
Yeah.
But it got kind of rapid, but anyway.
Yeah, it's because I kind of like started before you, but you're right, it's because it had to dry, that's why.
Yeah.
I just like I was sitting there the night before and I had the idea to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I had the idea the next day and then we tried to do it, then it would have been like, oh, well, I guess we can't paint today because we're going to wait.
Yeah, no, it was good you did it.
But when you said feeling awkward, I remember there were a couple of times you asked.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't ask me what to do. I was like, that's not how this works, just do it.
Yeah.
And then we did a lot, we figured out a lot, and we found a rhythm when we started working on it.
Yeah.
Because then, so sometimes we talked about both being in the piece at the same time, but there were definitely times where I just sat back and you were just going, and then you kind of sat back, and then we both were sitting there for a second. I was like, no, I need to do this. And I've never done that as much before with any painting. Even though this was still in one session, it was really long. I think that's why the reason we sat back. But I mean, it's even just good practice for me to do on my own, is to like do something and stand back and sit with it for a bit and figure out where I need to go next.
Yeah.
But I've never done it, and maybe it's because I've never painted anything this big by myself, unless it was like a outdoor mural type thing that was a planned thing. I've never done an abstract this big before, my own, maybe not even half the size.
Yeah.
So I think that was another part that was just like the size of it. How do we reconcile the composition and whatever, even if it was solo, it took like stepping back. So yeah, there were times where we were like, neither of us were working on it, but we were both looking at it. We generally didn't talk about it towards the end. But yeah, there were times where we were just like, we even like switched at the same time. We're just like, hey, well, we switched from the right to the left. And
and that's, I think, where you came up with the phrase, what is it, when we start, because there were these little pieces, like, you know how it is, always when you're painting a painting, and there's like this little lovely that you just like.
Oh, not my phrase, but it's the kill your darlings?
Right,
yeah,
that's what it was. Oh yeah, now I know where it came from.
Yeah.
Right, and so doing that, right, where you come along and then all of a sudden someone else will paint over, you're like, oh, the favorite part. But then, like the very first time it happened, I was kind of like, oh, damn, I really like that part. But then then it got to be like, it was cool, like it got to be, and it was not ever like I was like, oh, great, it was perfect, and now it's not.
Yeah.
It's just like the first time it happened, I was kind of like, oh, damn. But then I got fun sort of going, oh, I bet you was going to go this part. Like I got to, it was kind of like a game, like I knew you were going to go over there. I knew if I did this, you would go there. I don't know. The biggest challenge for me working this intense space-wise was energy. And so for me, that's what I didn't even realize I was sort of so affected by that as I was. But that's what I found. And I found this one, and so I think maybe that's why it's most enjoyable. Mm-hmm. I didn't ever feel any weird energy or what, like it just always felt easy. And still at the end, we had our, like, when is it finished? And it was like this, and we kept going back. And like that's when we sort of took the most time that maybe we were like more talking and then taking a step and doing it, whereas before we weren't even talking.
No.
We were just doing.
Yeah, for like 80% of it, it was just like, the first 80% was like we just grabbed paints. We didn't really talk that much at all.
Even when you sat back, like even when either of us sat back, it was never to go, oh, you should do this over there. It was never to do that. It was for ourselves. But.
Well, and it's the thing too, is like the kill your darlings part. Like it's even with this, like this is the piece we found that rhythm, and then it was like was like, oh crap. Like there were some times where I felt bad at first and then didn't at all, but you were in the middle of doing something, you were still doing it, and I was like, the second you step away, I am painting over that.
I know.
I was just like, the second, and then I would do it, and you're like, oh. And then later it became like, yeah, it's the thing that we like laugh at.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that's so, well, I'll get to that in a second. I guess like you were saying at the end, when we finish the piece with all of these, we get to a place where we both are like, I think we're done. And that's the thing about being like, it's not the same type of conceptual compatibility. I don't think we realized how collaboratively compatible we were until we did it. Because with these 5 pieces, we've generally very much at the same time been like, we're really close. And then we would talk like, these are my favorite parts, I really like these. There's a problem here though in this area, how do we resolve it?
Yeah.
And then I don't remember a time where we ever disagreed on like, no, I think that's a good part, like that needs to stay. It's usually been like, no, this is a problem with the composition, how do we fix it?
Yeah.
And sometimes
we struggled as to how to fix it.
Yeah. So that was definitely sometimes like oh, let's try this. Oh crap, I ruined everything. Let's start again. Like, or sometimes it was a really simple fix.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was just, it always changed on who was going to move forward to do something. And sometimes we talked about like, it needs this color. And other times it was like, I don't know, I'm just going to try something.
Yeah.
And then like you said, the various degrees of success, it was definitely sometimes still a mess, or we made it worse, or whatever.
Well, and I remember on this piece, because of the butcher's block paper, and I really wanted to like I ended up like ripping it.
Yeah.
And I could tell you weren't like very happy about it.
Not at the start.
No. And so it was sort of like this, okay, I know that wasn't like that. I know he doesn't love that. So we'll see where it goes from there. And so it was, I never felt like you were like, I guess it's all that trust thing again.
Yeah.
So I knew that wasn't your jam. I knew you wouldn't have done that. But I was like, I need to do that for me. I need to do this. And okay, well, we'll see what's going to happen along with that, right? And so then it did go along with it. But there were times where I was like, I know this isn't something he would do, but I really need to do this. Yeah. And I hope he's going to be okay with it.
Well, it's not even so much that I wouldn't do it, because sometimes I just wouldn't think to do something. But with the butcher's paper thing, now that you said it, I totally remember being like, you probably just felt my energy being like, I had it in like it was like a block of paper, it was just whatever. And now it's one of my favorite parts because of the paint underneath and the way it plays with layers. Because it's not just the texture being on top in a flat way anymore, there's other layers because of the rip. And so now it's one of my favorite parts about it, but like, it wasn't the fact that I never would have thought to do it either, it's just the fact that you felt like, he's not going to like that. But it's the thing, after this piece, I don't think we had moments that were like that strong or that like nervous or whatever. But that leads into what I really want to get to, which is the fact that that is what is so magical about doing these, because any of the pieces we have done together, neither one of us would have been able to do by ourselves. And that seems like a really obvious statement, but at the same time, like you said at the beginning, we don't paint the same way. So I've been doing abstracts for like a little over 10 years, and you just started last year. And at first, I mean, especially with doing this and stuff, where at first you were just like so nervous about it. You're like, I don't do this, and I was like,
well, because I barely started painting when we did this.
And it ended up being completely fine, and it was just like, part of it was trying to, I didn't know how to even try to encourage you to let go sometimes. I was like, just do, just act, just don't think. But it really quickly, like I said, within one piece, it shifted to, it was like completely equal ground when we figured that out. But it's the thing, like I love, there's none of these pieces where I can look back and think, there's that one thing that you did that I wasn't a fan of, that I was left alone. Because at least for me, I know that I didn't leave anything alone. If there was something I didn't like, I covered it, or I erased it, or whatever. I did something to it. And we just kept going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on some things, and then and it ended up being a place where we both liked it.
Yeah.
So there's nothing I can, on any of the pieces I can even point to sometimes that was like, that was you or that was me.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that I can remember, oh yeah, that was Morley, because like the scratching in some of them, and I ended up, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna do some of that. That was a great idea. But there's a couple things I can remember like that, but very little.
Yeah.
It was like so collaborative for me that like I can't remember what I painted and what I didn't sometimes. I just remember like that we have a lot of the same favorite parts too, and it's not because that was my part or like it was just
Well, I'm looking. I mean, this isn't really fair when you're when you're doing a podcast, or B when you're on YouTube and still someone can't see. But one of the paintings I'm looking at right now, you kind of added, and you sort of started to go in and add kind of these little, I was kind of calling them these little villages.
Yeah.
And so you can't see them that much anymore because now that they're framed, they kind of have fallen off and around in some spots. But I love them so much, and it just became this whole entire interesting, biodome, weird, fantastical little painting that I really quite love. But it was all these things that you would never have painted, little villagey, like little people-y thing, like that's just not your jam.
You're right, and that's
And yet it works so well in there, and it's something that is not really something that I think you would have done, or something that like it's just I think it's just really cool, and it's a way of when you're collaboratively. You're responding to this section of this painting.
Yeah.
And so it's a response to this rather than maybe a whole new feeling. It's kind of a response to, it's not that we were like, I painted this and now you're painting that. Not a response that way, but there is this response to either color, like a lot of you and I have like different colors kind of that we use or mix up or sometimes at least we have in different paintings where there's some colors that come in that the other person wouldn't use, or you'll come in with metallics or spray paints, or you have like a lot of flat lines or things like that. So there's like a lot of these like techniques or colors or whatever that really change, and I mean they change from painting to painting then. And change the atmosphere of what's going on within that painting and what we decide to do while we're painting.
Yeah.
So, have I taken away what you were talking about?
No.
Something good in collaborating, but just it really, the positive ways that it affects or brings out or responds to, and I think we both just were really open to that too. I don't think there's any ego like with us when we work, which is really nice. So it's just being able to get in there and doing it. And I didn't feel judgment. I mean, you've been painting for years. I literally have been painting for months, but I felt like an equal when I didn't in the first piece. Definitely didn't. Definitely was really felt self-conscious and like that. But like you say, by the time we did the second piece, it's not that I was such a better painter, but I just felt more as a partner in what was going on in the process of what we were doing.
See, to me, like I feel like that makes you a better painter. By letting, even if you're doing it by yourself, it's not just in response to me. You felt more confident in letting go of thinking too much, and therefore you were a better painter because you were painting with way more confidence and looseness and not thinking as much and just acting more.
Hi. Shall we do a stop?
Okay, we had a little intermission because the gallery owner came down and took a look at our stuff. So I don't remember 100% exactly where we were, but I knew what I was going to say next. And it was jumping off the thing that you said about these like little villages and stuff like that on that one piece. That's not something I would do on my own at all. And it was very much reactionary to what was going on in the piece. And that, I mean, there's like two layers to that because with abstract pieces in general, everything is just a reaction to the thing you've done before, right? So it's like every stroke of paint ends up being influenced from the thing you did at the very right step before that, and that's just how it goes. And so then, but on the second layer is that now I'm reacting to your stuff.
Right.
And for some reason, like I wasn't thinking about it until you brought it up at all, that like I ended up doing stuff that I would never even do. And or things that I do so incredibly rarely, because the other thing on that piece is that there's like X's, and that's because you tend to, more than I do, have like characters of either text or something.
Yeah.
And there was another one where I put a cross on it.
Yeah.
And that was in reaction because you were doing some text. And some of the times you put, like, or not text, but like a character of some nature.
And then you'll.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. So I ended up, I was being like, that's not a bad idea. I don't like the way you did it right there, but maybe if I put one over here, and then I left it, and you left it too. But yeah, there's things that I do very rarely or wouldn't do at all that it ends up getting brought out of me when we're working together. And yeah, I was just, from earlier just thinking like, yeah, that's the beauty that I love of all these pieces that I never would have done it by myself. And at the same time, I love everything about it. It's just that push and pull of different stuff that ends up being like, I think that if they had looked at my work individually and all the however many abstracts I've ever done, and then looked at one of these, I still don't think, like, I mean, if they were a really observant person, I don't think they would say, yeah, that's one of yours. Maybe parts of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Because when I see them, I don't think of them like, yeah, I could have done this on my own. Like, I couldn't have, with so many things that got, whether it's ripping the butcher's paper or the characters, or like the carving into the pieces, or just certain, like you said before, like the techniques and stuff that we employ a lot of the times are different, but they end up just working together.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what good collaboration should be.
Yeah.
Like, good collaboration should do that. You should be able to steal from somebody, or build from somebody, or be inspired by somebody, you know, like collaboration should be that way. Do you want to talk about
the second, or the one that didn't work out very well?
Yeah.
I
actually really like it.
Yeah, I shouldn't say it didn't work out very well. No. It was the biggest struggle.
It was.
Yeah, so that was our second biggest piece.
Was that the second one?
And what was the second one we did in total? Was it not?
Yeah, I think so.
Second or third?
Because then they got smaller.
Yeah. And that one was, like I said, I think it might be a coincidence, some of it, but we had a discussion first where, like, it was also after I started recording YouTube videos. And so we had a couple conversations on camera before then, or maybe just one before then. And then we had this conversation about purity, and we're like, oh, why don't we record this conversation, and like that'll be like, we'll talk about it, and then that'll be kind of what we're jumping off of and painting. That's why it ended up being we were talking about making it white.
Right.
Yeah, because we had this conversation ahead of time, and with other pieces, or like with this one, we didn't have a conversation.
Yeah.
I think at the very beginning, it was like, hey, what do you want to listen to? Okay, sounds good. And then we would listen to something, and then we're both drawing off of that, and like you said, each other's energy. But with that white one, you might remember better than me. And it's not white. I call it the white one now.
Yeah.
But
we should have actually titled it that.
The white one.
Because it's not white at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to trick people up.
And I don't remember what else might have been going on externally that day, but we started it. That was like affecting the mood, but it definitely was like you said, like our energy
I think
was
what
not.
happened was, our energy definitely. What happened? I'm not exactly sure up until that point. I had this idea because we have been talking about that, and then I've always wanted to do a painting that is white, but of course, like there are no true whites, so that had a bunch of different whites to it, and that would kind of layer onto what we're talking about, purity and that kind of thing. And so in my head, that's kind of what I had, and then when we're talking about it, that's probably what you had like whites. So I started doing like yellow whites and like pink sort of, and then you had been doing with whites. And so then I think you were just like, F it, like screw you. And so then you came in with like gray or something, and I was like, what the hell's going on? With like this really like harsh energy. And I was like, so I just like literally stepped back because I was like even physically like sort of like, whoa, what just happened? Like, why did you just like paint over that? And you even had like a roller.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, you had like a roller, and you were like rolling over it, and I was like, what the hell just happened? And so I sort of just sat back, and then I was kind of like a little like, I don't know, and then could tell that you were like upset or something. And so I think I asked you, and you were like, well, I thought we were doing white. You were just going like, And so I could tell that then I had disrupted what you were thinking with the painting process, right?
Yeah.
And so because we had these two different, even though we sat there and we said white, in our mind we have two different ways of working to get these whites, right?
Yeah.
And so the way I was working to get the whites, you were like, okay, well, if you're not going to do it, why should I do it then? Like, you kind of had this like very, well, not even visceral, it was like a physical response to it. But your sharpness or just took me by surprise. And so I ended up being, and I'm like really, really sensitive to feelings or something, I don't know, or I'm
What's the energy, I think, in general.
That energy, yeah. And so then I felt like sort of like guilty and so I was trying to like do all these, and you're still kind of trying to work from your, I thought you were going to do it white, like what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden all these colors start, like, we ended up like coming to a point, it still didn't come at the end, neither one of us felt it was done. It's not like we were angry at the end of doing it.
Well, that's the thing, sorry to interrupt, but we talked about the other pieces being done in one session.
Yeah.
This one was not.
Exactly.
We left this one at least twice.
At least twice, yeah.
And that was because it was like, we had to abandon eventually the idea that we had at the beginning because we weren't in sync on the idea.
Yeah.
And then we learned, let's not have an idea like that again. Let's not do that. If it's one thing to be like, hey, let's just paint the background this color and to have a starting point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and then we pick music and then we go. Like, how are you feeling today? Oh, I feel like I want something high energy or I want something really chill. That's as much as we talk about things now.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that one, it was, we left it alone. We're like, hey, and then one time we thought it was done, we photographed it,
Yeah.
and put it up online, and then it was like, no. It's not. And then we had to leave it again and then come back to it.
Yeah, you had to take it down. You know, it reminds me of this thing that happened with Kelly and I when we were working, and I had always wanted to do this thing sort of about these pods or these sort of like comfort things, and I was like, oh, okay, you get in these pods, but you're swinging like from a rope, so you're just kind of like, yeah, kind of. Like, that's probably what I should have called it. But like sort of a contained, like I wanted it like contained. So kind of like a chrysalis, kind of like that. Anyways, that's what was in my brain. And Kelly's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, we should do that. So then we start getting ready to think about making it and how would we make it. And so we both draw them, and I look at her drawing, and her drawing is like a tube that then has like two chains that go up, and you like crawl into this tube and then you like sway back and forth. And mine, of course, sort of looks like this crystalids kind of pod thing hanging. And I was like, oh my God, here we've been talking about the same thing for like probably 2 hours. We were talking about materials we could make it out of. We were talking about what gallery space we could put it in. We were talking about even like what it meant and how it could be and why it was important that it was hanging versus this, yada yada. And so we have all this talking about this idea, and when it came down to it, actually, like you can have all these same ideas, you can have all these conversations, but then when you go to put it down on paper or go and do something, you have it two different ways in your head. And so it's one thing with working collaboratively, is you can think you're on the same page and you think you know what's going on, and then you hit a canvas or you hit something, and you're like, whoa, that's totally not what I thought.
Yeah.
But that like energy thing, and that's one is called something about a bruise, right?
Your experience is a bruise.
Yeah, and because I said to you, like, this one is actually really violent to me, and it wasn't that you were violent or that I was violent back. It's just that it had such, it just was such a visceral feeling for me, and just such a feeling of being taken aback that it left me with feelings even when we left the painting. And so that's just something else with working collaboratively, is those feelings are so intense, and being as you're open to all of the good feelings and the good ways of working, then you're also really open to those other things, and you can just be affected by that so much. And I actually really like that piece now.
Yeah. We resolved it.
But it took a while.
It did, and there was like, yeah. It did take a while. It took
Yeah.
months, technically, because there was 3 different sessions, and they did not, it was not like, okay, let's get back to that tomorrow. It was
it was like, do we need to look at that one again?
yeah, and the thing is, like, I got anxious about leaving it unfinished,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, like, it needs to be done, I'm tired, I don't want it there. Like, even if I didn't see it, mentally, I was just like,
you knew.
it's there, it's not done, it's this huge thing, we need to finish it. And the thing, because the materials we're using too, it's not like an oil painting where it stays wet. And that's always my thing with working with spray paints and acrylics and things that dry quickly, is that if it's not still wet, you're painting on top of it, not into it.
Right.
And so I'm just like, I'm not used to working that way. I do things in one sitting or in stages. Like, okay, we put the texture on, we put one background color on, and then I can walk away from it and then come back. But everything else, like the main part of the painting, is like one session. So yeah, I definitely had anxiety about going back into it, but also not going into it and like leaving it too long. But the 3 that we did after that, they're all smaller and still, and then I think it was just coincidence with what we had for canvas. And yeah, but I didn't have that amount of anxiety, I guess. Like I feel like the first one was the first one, so it's very different. And the second one was a huge struggle, therefore it was really different. The third one we did is, to me, a very different thing than the other ones because I created this weird narrative in my head about it, and it's still an abstract piece, but to me, it could be something else.
Yeah.
And the 2 we did after that, I think, are the most similar to each other.
Yeah, even the color palette's close.
Yeah, and I don't know why that happened, but
because they weren't close, they didn't happen close together.
It might have, I guess time-wise, they were kind of closer, and maybe musically there was more energy, for sure, so that could have been a part of it, but I think that now that we're talking about the sizes and stuff, what I'm excited for is kind of talking about past and present of collaborating, or near present, and now we have this, I think you alluded to it early on, this piece we're going to do that is a big piece again, that it's going to be actually the biggest that we've ever done. So we talked about why we're down here in the basement, because we have this exhibition that's coming in less than a week, and part of that, other than these 5 pieces we've already done together, is that we're going to be making a new piece together. Opening night, we're going to be starting to work on it, and then whenever we get time, it could be once a week, so maybe we have 3 or 4 sessions with it, which will be a little different for us too, because the only time we've had multiple sessions was because it wasn't working out. But we want to kind of have purposely 3 or 4 sessions where we stop, and then that'll be interesting.
That will be. I was just going to say, I hadn't thought of it before, but that will be interesting.
Maybe we should have a time limit being like, so that way we don't have to question, when do we stop? Because normally we stop when we think it's done.
Yeah, maybe
so
we
it'll have
do
to be
need to
like
have
2 hours of painting, then we stop, no matter
just
what.
even an hour,
Or an hour,
Yeah, we'll have to, you're right, and I think we do need, because that way we're stopped at it might be tough, but I think that would be a good practice,
And then the last session we won't have a time limit because we don't know how long it'll take to resolve, but.
Right.
But yeah, so that's what we're doing next. That's the future of our collaboration is.
So I'm kind of excited about that part of kind of tying together this collaboration, and so we're sharing that collaboration then with people who come down to see the exhibition. So then I think there's a chance for people to see, even if they don't see it in real time, then they get to see where there is collaboration happening, where 2 people have been working on something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the biggest thing, if you're going to work collaboratively, find someone you trust, find someone you respect, and find someone you would even like to emulate. You like their work, they're going to lift you up with what they do. And then along with that, then you can, if you have somebody that you trust, you can go a long way. You can open yourself up quite a bit because you've got that initial trust.
I think someone that inspires you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In one way or the other, like, because at that point, like you mentioned, you've been painting for a couple months, but our conversations and our compatibility with concepts and whatever, and I don't even remember which paintings you did before this, so it wasn't like, oh yeah, like. Yeah. Those pieces are inspired. Like
actually, you took a lot of trust in me, really. in collaborating with me because.
Well, there's no, what was the worst thing that was gonna happen?
Yeah,
We spent a bunch of time and then we realized it didn't work,
Yeah.
but it did work, so.
Yeah, true. It was brilliant.
Yeah, well, I mean, generally it was like, other than that,
No.
that one struggle, that it was fun. Like, that's the thing, it was easygoing and it was fun, and it was,
Yeah.
we were just working on it, and it's a whole new experience. Like I said, a decade of me painting abstracts by myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then we started doing this, and like I said, my thing was trying to let go of control.
Yeah.
That was my biggest thing. And your thing, I think, one thing just for you on an individual level for painting is letting go of control in a different way.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm like, I want this to look how I want it to look in the end was my thing, right? Because I wasn't, you're more process-based than I am, and have always been that way, I think. And
Yeah.
I only started to get that way after a certain point, and it wasn't in this regard. So part of me was having to adjust to the process and trust in the process more without thinking of like, how am I going to get this to it was like at the very beginning I was so scared that we were going to work on this for hours and I wasn't going to like it.
Yeah.
But again, within that piece we found the rhythm of like, well, I change what I don't like, and then you change what you don't like, and then we get to a place where we solve the problems we see, and they're generally the same problems, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's been, I don't know, how many months has it been since we did the last piece? I don't think we've done one this summer.
No, I don't think so either.
So it's been like 3-4 months.
Yeah. And it does, I think we were just mentioning that it would be nice to do another one, and now I guess we will be doing another one.
Yeah.
So that's good. But I mean, it is, we are still sharing the space, and so there is in a way a collaboration spirit, but it's completely different having a collaboration and then a collaboration painting within a 6 foot, half the time only 3 foot sort of space.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's the thing, like you said, collaborating in spirit. I like that, and that's sharing studio space and stuff. Now, even when you're not there, I feel your presence there with your work, with whatever's going around, and like sometimes it's just like, even if I'm not even in the painting studio, even if I'm in like the dry space and just reading and writing or whatever, like you've decorated that space and I know like your books are there or whatever. So like I'm just saying, even sometimes that influences me just because I'm like, oh, you were there and you are still there and present, and then it gets me thinking about something, and then I'm like, I think I want to try this thing or try that thing.
Yeah.
Which is a nice thing about sharing a studio space, which I never thought I'd probably say like a year ago.
Yeah.
Like sharing a space is nice, like no, because I want it to be organized and clean and like, but it's definitely worth it. Like I don't have any complaints.
That's good.
But yeah, so we talked about what we're going to be doing and collaborating on this new piece for our exhibition that's all about collaboration and how we work together in the relationship of art and individuals, and I don't even know how else to describe it. But what I want to say, I guess, to wrap that up is that for people that are watching and or listening in the Southern Alberta area, or if you're going to be in Southern Alberta in the next month, the exhibition is from September 28th. That's when the reception is at 9 p.m. and it goes until November 8th. So September 28th till November 8th. And it is at Le Petit Trianon, which is the basement of the Trianon building. And it's 104 5th Street South in Lethbridge. So I know there's a door, like on one of my videos on my channel, I like, in one of the vlogs, I like show people how to get down here, because there's like a door that says employees only, and the thing is the door stop doesn't work to hold it open, so it always says employees only, and you can come right down here.
Yeah.
Maybe
You can always send a message on our, like to our email, or especially on our Facebook page or something.
Yeah, our Instagram, our email, or our Facebook.
Any of those places.
Absolutely. And what I'll do for the YouTube video is that I'll have one of the videos, like at the end, I'll link it to the vlog where I talk about it. It's at the very beginning on my personal channel, FK Arts, where at the very beginning of it, I'm like, hey, I'm standing outside. I'm like, this is how you get in to the space. So if you're listening, if you're listening to it, you can go to the YouTube channel, which is Artist Life Podcast, and you can find those links. Well, I think the link is in the description of the podcast, as well as on our Facebook and Instagram and different places too. So anyway, Yeah.
This is an artist's life.
Yes. Yes, it is.